Welcome to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where we feature top leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry with your host, Drew Hendricks. Now, let's get started with the show.
Drew Thomas Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry. Past guests of Legends Behind the Craft include Daniel Dow of Dow Family Estates, Sharon Guerin Staglin of Staglin Vineyard, and Hillary Kokolis of Sipwell Wine Co. Today's episode, it's sponsored by Barrels Ahead. At Barrels Ahead, we work with you to implement a one-of-a-kind marketing strategy, one that highlights your authenticity, tells your story, and connects you with your ideal customers. In short, we help wineries and craft beverage producers unlock their story to unleash their revenue. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. Today, I also have Bianca Harmon on the show again. Bianca is one of our direct-to-consumer marketing strategists. If you ever want to level up your direct-to-consumer game, you got to give her a call. How's it going, Bianca?
It's going good, Drew. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk to Jason today and learn all about his fantastic winery.
Yes, yeah. Today's a special guest. We're actually working with Jason right now, building out his new website. And Jason Bushong, he's the owner and winemaker at Bushong Vintage Wine Company. Jason's been involved in all aspects of winemaking over the past 20 years. And in 2017, he opened up his own tasting room in downtown Paso Robles. I'm super excited to uncover his story today on Legends Behind the Craft. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on. So we got to just jump right into this. How did you get your start 20 years ago in the wine industry?
Well, I kind of got my start as a wine consumer first when I was 18 years old. Yeah. I had a roommate, and he actually brought home a bottle of Chardonnay from a Santa Barbara County winery. And we were in Riverside, California, which is where I was raised. And we shared that bottle of wine. And from that point forward, I was pretty much a wine enthusiast.
That's amazing. Like at 18, I think I was still on the Southern Comfort tequila train.
Yeah, I didn't really have a preference at that point, but I did after that night. And then that was wine. I never got to be like the beer guy or what have you. I just was really fascinated with wine. But at that point, it was more just on a consumer and educational and exploratory type of a situation. And then a few years later, when I was in college, I still had my wine passion, I guess. And so I found a professor who had a winery where I was going to school and asked him if I could start working for him.
Oh, amazing. Where did you go to school?
I went to Humboldt State University.
And did you gravitate towards those wine classes or towards?
No, they didn't really have any wine programs. I ended up there, sadly enough, because just a bunch of my friends were going up there to go to school. And so I just tagged along and we all got a big house and rented it together. And then I actually went through a small junior college called College of the Redwoods and then transferred to Humboldt State, which is now, they just made it Cal Poly Humboldt. They actually
did they?
Yep.
Yeah, my fiance graduated from Humboldt State.
Yeah. So now we are, I say I wasn't a Humboldt State, I'm a Cal Poly Humboldt person. That sounds better. There's only 3 Cal Polys now, or there were only 2, Pomona and San Luis, and now they added Humboldt, which makes sense. It's a pretty science-oriented school with forestry and oceanography and a lot of biological sciences.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So what did you study at Humboldt?
Psychology.
Psychology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh.
What's that?
Oh, I was thinking psychology because that kind of ties into wine and the psychology behind people's taste.
No, I think honestly, it was the easiest degree to get while I was just running around playing with wine, and that's really, I didn't really have a strong interest in psychology, but it was just one of those social sciences that wasn't as demanding as, say, if I was studying chemistry or biology. And it let me, I worked in restaurants and tried to work in the best restaurants that had the best wine lists so that I could get more exposure to wine. And then, like I said, I sought out a professor who had a winery and started working with him.
Yeah, talk to me about that. That's pretty interesting to see.
Yeah, he was actually an oceanography professor at Humboldt State. His name is Bob Hodgson. He had a small winery called Fieldbrook Valley. And we got most of our grapes from Mendocino County, although there were some grapes being grown in eastern Humboldt County and Trinity County, which is adjacent to that. And actually, Humboldt County, the Willow Creek District in Humboldt County was established as an AVA, an American Viticultural Appellation, in the 70s. Strangely enough, and there was just a few vineyards out there, and that's funny now because now the Willow Creek District in Paso Robles is by far the most relevant district here, but no one ever mentions that there's actually a Willow Creek District in Humboldt County too.
That's fast. Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't know there's two.
Yeah.
So as you began your journey into winemaking, what was the biggest surprise?
I remember that the biggest surprise to me, the first time that I got to actually work with grapes with Bob, was how small the berries were. Everyone's used to table grapes. And so that was my impression. And we got some Chardonnay grapes in, and I was like, oh my God, these are just the smallest berries compared to a table grape. And you don't think about it, but you don't see wine grapes very often. And, I know that there are bigger varieties, like Zinfandel or what have you, but those Chardonnays were incredibly small. And I just remember I was shocked at how small they were. And
keep going. I was just going to say, at least you were just shocked by how small the grapes were. One of my favorite stories to this day is when I worked in the tasting room, and we used to bring in, when we were harvesting, we would bring in grape samples and let customers taste each day, experience what a wine grape was. There's this one day, there was this couple, and this lady picked up one of the table grapes, and she was like, wow, these are great. And her husband was like, yeah. He's like, but I can't taste the alcohol in them. And I was like, is he joking or is he serious?
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I can't taste it. And I'm like, oh, okay. He's serious. And I was like, well, we don't actually go around with a needle and inject alcohol into each one of the grapes. It goes through a fermentation process, just like any other alcohol, to produce it.
Yep.
So
yeah,
it's one of my favorite stories behind table grapes.
I get that. I get those questions in the tasting room all the time. Mainly, it's associated with characteristics. They're like, "Oh, well, did you put grapefruit in this to make it smell like grapefruit?" That's you get. I mean, literally, it's amazing, but you can't expect everybody to have a baseline knowledge of that and what have you. So, but we get that all the time.
So, were you basically self-taught or into your winemaking?
Yeah. So I worked with Fieldbrook Valley Winery with Bob for a couple of harvests, and I didn't get paid. I got paid a bottle an hour. So I ended up taking home a bunch of wine, like at the holidays after harvest, and giving it to the family when I went back to see everybody from school. And then I met another gentleman who was just part of, strangely enough, there was a pretty active wine community in and around Arcata, which was the city where Humboldt State is. And there was a restaurant called Folie Douce that was a big wine place, and they would have a tasting once a month. And actually, the owner of that restaurant went on to start a winery in Napa Valley, which is quite successful to this day. But I met another guy who was going to build a small winery and plant vineyard in eastern Humboldt County. And then I started working with him. And I worked with him for the last 2 years of my college career. And we put together a small makeshift winery. He bought a building in downtown Arcata, and we converted it to a winery. And then we planted 2 vineyards on the east side, one in Willow Creek, which is the area I was talking about earlier. And the other one was on the Hoopa Indian Reservation, strangely enough. Yeah, he bought a piece of property on the reservation, and we planted a vineyard there. So then I kept working with him. But yeah, at that point, it was just hands-on and my own studies in winemaking outside of going to school. I started getting books on winemaking, and so yeah, it was kind of, I was just developing it on my own.
It's amazing. You definitely have to have the passion for it. And this leads into that next question, that passion for wine that stemmed 25 years, and just is not abating. Why wine? What is it about wine?
I think for me, I was always a fairly artistic person, and wine is the ultimate, culmination of art, science, and agriculture. And so it was just, I liked the idea of having a job where I could be outside a lot, or actually at that time, I didn't even think of it as a job. About halfway through my degree in psychology, I decided I wanted to make wine for a living, but I didn't know how I was going to go about that. But to me, I think those elements, you have the science, which is guiding the production of the wine, but it's heavily influenced by artistic, in the methods that you choose to make it, and what kind of cooperage you're going to use, what fermentation vessels, and all those things, were your palate that you could choose from. But then you do have the science that is guiding behind it. You need to know what the acidity of the wine is, and the pH of the wine, and how much sugar is in the grape still, and all those not complex science, at least not for me. And then the agricultural side of it, I never really got into viticulture, but I definitely like the idea of working outside, being in vineyards, and not basically being in front of a screen like we are now. And so I think those three things just were like, okay. And I think it was also variety. There's just an endless amount of different kinds of wines. And I just was always into, is like variety. Food, I want to try all the different things, and wine is just endless. I'm constantly learning about new varieties from all over the world all the time. And I think that's the geeky side for me, is like, if I could try every, variety out there, I'd be over in Georgia, where they started making wine 6,000 years ago, and trying all these ancient varieties and what have you. And that's a question I get all the time. It's like, what's your favorite variety to work with? And I'm like, as many as possible, but unfortunately economics comes into play, and I just can't go spend all my money making all the wine I want to make. And then I have to figure out how to sell it. Nobody's heard of it because it's from Croatia or something.
So are you still, with now owning your own winery, is your hands in all of the field, in the parts of it too, with making the wine out in the vineyard, in the tasting room? Are you still able to do as much as you were, or?
Even more so in the last year and a half, because up until then I was doing a lot of outside consulting, and I stopped. I slowly tapered off all my consulting. And so the last year and a half, basically 21 was the first full vintage where I was only doing my own production. And so that gave me a lot more time to be hands-on in my vineyards and work with my growers. And obviously I do all the winemaking myself with help. I need some youth, I'm getting older. I can't do all the physical stuff. So I have help. But before that, I was running around consulting for other people, and I couldn't focus as much as I wanted to just on my own stuff. And to be honest with you, like the last couple of years, I feel like have been the best winemaking years of my career at this point. It's sort of strange that you waited till 25 years into the deal, and I feel like I'm making the best wine. But before that, I was always working for other people as well.
So this time gives you the chance to kind of explore your own kind of house style, passion, and just vision for where you want to grow wine.
Yeah, it just gives me more time to, like I said, work with growers, discover new growers. Whereas before my brand was kind of my side job, and really where I made my living was doing consulting for a long time. And then before that, I was actually a winemaker for somebody. I worked as a full-time winemaker.
Helped you hone your skills. And honing your skills, where there's always the dividing line between art and science and creativity. Where do you find that line, and how?
I think that line is always moving for me. And I used to be very much more on the pendulum was on the science side. And that was particularly when I was working for other people, because I stuck with very functional winemaking and very safe winemaking, because it wasn't my money. It wasn't my products. I wasn't making the investment. And so I felt like I'm going to make these wines as by the book as possible. and the people I worked for at various places, that was the goal. You know, when we ran a large production facility, you had millions of gallons of inventory, which you could not really mess around with too much because the loss would be extreme if something went wrong. So, and then as I got to slowly convert over just to my own production, I have much more the pendulum is swung much more into the artistic side and production styles that I used to see as like, I just thought they were kind of dangerous or risky. And now we do a lot more of that for sure. And that would be
what's an example of that?
Just extended macerations to me, you know, that's a big example. Nowadays I leave all of my wines on skins for, you know, upwards of 35, 40 days.
Oh, wow.
Or even after they've stopped fermenting. Thermal vinification methods, I play with those a lot more, which used to just scare me. You know, you wouldn't want to heat the wine up at any point or heat the grapes at fermenting at that point, because it risks contamination. Bacteria starts to thrive in warmer environments. Uninoculated fermentations, spontaneous fermentations, and same with malolactic fermentations. It just goes on and on. I mean, it just feels like the last few years I really had eye-opening experiences, and also working in other facilities, because I don't own my own facility, gives you exposure to the different ways that people did it. Whereas when I worked and I was the winemaker, you get a little cellar blind and you're like, yep, this is the way we do it. And that's that, you know? And so I think the past couple of years have been really exciting, because it's like, wow, I'm like getting a lot of exposure. It's funny. You never really stop learning in whatever you do in life.
Well, absolutely. And it's building on that science. Like, in order for an artist to really, truly go beyond in their craft, they need to know the scientific basis of it.
Yeah.
That's where you're at.
And then toss it out the window. No.
And then toss it out. So as the art is flourishing and you're getting your wines out, how would you describe Bushong Vintage Wine Company's house style?
We like to make basically vivid, aromatic, crisp white wines and full-bodied red wines. That's pretty much. I don't make Chardonnay, although I am making Roussanne this year, which is a little bit more age-worthy, heavy-bodied white wine. So, but normally I only make like Albarino and Rosé and sparkling Gewürztraminer, and just very light, acid-driven, very vividly aromatic styles of white wine. I'm making the Roussanne because I want a fall white wine.
Oh, yeah.
I always run out of my white and rosés by summertime, and then I don't have any white wine until the following spring. And so I decided to add a later aged white wine, which in this case would be Roussanne. And then on the red wines, we make primarily Rhone varietals. I shouldn't say primarily. On reds, we actually do. I think the majority of the grapes I work with are Rhone varieties by background, with the exception of Tempranillo. And that goes into a blend anyway. But we try to make full-bodied yet balanced red wines. Paso is an interesting and unique area to make wine in, because it's a very ripe region. You have to get grapes very ripe here to reach physiological maturity, and because of that, you tend to have higher alcohols and riper flavors. And I like to try to balance those out a little bit and not have it super extracted.
Sure. Yeah, you were mentioning how you're working with extended macerations and skin contact. Then you were talking about the whites being bright and fresh. Have you done any work with like extended skin contact Chardonnays and Roussannes?
I don't make any Chardonnay, but I do some skin contact on whites, but not fermentation on skin. We'll foot tread Albarino and let it, for 12 to 24 hours before we press it, or a portion of it anyway, just to get a little bit of skin breakdown and skin contact there to add some complexity to it. But I've not yet fermented a white wine on the skins, which is becoming, sort of trendy right now, particularly in the natural.
The orange wines are very trendy right now.
The orange wines. Natural wine is an interesting phenomenon to me. I mean, all wine's natural, so I don't really understand that, but you know what I mean.
I get it.
So the natural wine guys still have to bring their wine over in a truck and put it through a bunch of machines and stuff, but it's more natural for some reason. I'm not sure. I understand that.
I don't either.
Yeah.
The worst is when the people are asking you to, like, do you have any natural wines? It's like, well, I mean, all of
They're
this
all
is
natural.
pretty natural. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I get that too.
One of the kind of the, I don't think it's like slogan, but the way that's described on your website is high fidelity wines.
Yes, that is yeah. I mean, high fidelity that's in reference to my love of music and my love of hi-fi audio equipment that I had a passion for as well since I was even before high school. And so high fidelity wines was just sort of made sense because we have a lot of those elements in our tasting experience, and a lot of the makeup of my different wines that we make are either music related. And so high fidelity wines, there used to be a guy who used a similar term down in Santa Barbara, and he was like a hi-fi guy too, but that was a long time ago, and he's since retired. But
get that one. Now, do you ever do you have a playlist for your wines?
We do. We always have a playlist when we come out with like our spring releases and our fall releases. We include a playlist with that, which I need to expand on a little bit because we do an album per wine and then talk about the songs within the album. What have you.
How do you pick that?
We pick that by I buy a lot of music. I
can see behind you. You've got a couple records.
I got a couple. Yeah, and it's becoming an incredibly bad habit. And like, I just came home with 4 more because I was in San Luis doing some shopping and thought, I'll just stop by the record store. Not a good idea. And so usually it's the albums that we use are albums that we actually recently got, newer music that we were turned on to in that year. And occasionally we'll do a throwback, but typically we're trying to do new stuff and just introduce people to a bunch of new music. I used to think that all the new music anymore was just dead and it was worthless. But there's a lot of music you just don't hear about. And then, so we try to explore that as much as possible. And we're always looking for people to go, hey, check this out. Let's take a listen to this. Have you heard this? And we have lots of members in our club that are obviously music fans as well. And they're always turning us on to new stuff as well. And then we'll listen to that and hopefully include some of that into the playlist.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Clark Smith. He's up in he does the wine and music and helps tasting rooms optimize their background tracks to sell more wine.
Yeah.
And he's got a couple Spotify playlists. Well, he's actually got an extensive Spotify playlist with all of the different varietals and what he thinks you should be listening to for each one. Yep. Do you ascribe to the fact that the music can change the taste of the wine?
Absolutely. I think not just music, but so many psychological elements affect the taste of wine. I mean, the mood you're in when you're tasting it, the environment, the people, the music, the sound that's around it, all of those things, I think, I mean, that's where that old saying that, wine tastes best on the soil it was produced kind of comes into play. I think that's part of it. It's a psychological element that plays into it. I don't know if I could go as far as Clark does. But, I agree. I think I've been trying to put together a experiential tasting, and that's going to be more associated with another tier that I'm going to be releasing in the fall, which is called Analogique, which is just basically French for analog. And that we're going to have a experiential tasting where we're going to test that idea. And
that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. So music, the party tasting will be listening to music, and they may be tasting the same wine twice with different music. And I just want to see how they rate that wine while they're listening to different music, tasting it. Blindly. I'm trying to figure out how to do it and actually sell the wine too. More than have it just be kind of a science experience.
That's gonna be great. I can't wait to be part of that.
It could be. We've been trying to develop that, it's been in the back of my mind for about 2 years. I finally have the wines to do it. They're getting bottled early this summer before we go into harvest. And so then I'll try to put together that tasting experience going into the winter.
Yeah, I 100% agree with the fact that the music will shape the wine. It's because the music, especially music from analog, it's got such an organic quality to it, and it shapes your mind, it shapes your vision. It's going to shape your perceptions of what you're tasting because you're taking one of the five senses.
You're kind of working with all the senses, right?
Yeah.
I think sound is the only sense that's not directly attributed to the wine. With the wine, you have sight, the color, clarity, you have olfactory, you have taste. I guess you have feel. It's in a glass in your hand. You're spinning it. You're doing that kind of stuff. So audio is really the only one that isn't directly related to that product that you're tasting, except it usually is in the environment you're in.
You can hear the cork pop.
You're right. The cork pop. If you have a cork.
Yes, if you have a cork. But yeah, that's the one part that's so vital, like for as part of the experience.
I used to do screw cap, and I have now gone back to all cork finished products as of last year for a number of reasons. And I'll tell you that the sound of the pop was the last one. It had really very little to do with that. But you're right. I remember people saying, I don't like screw caps because I like that sound. It's a tradition, or something a custom that they've appreciated forever. It's coming when you go pop, and yeah.
Although on a hot day, the click of a screw cap on a white is pretty enticing too.
Yeah, and not having to go find a tool to open it.
Yeah.
If you're at the pool, it might be easier just to go and not have to worry about it.
So working through the senses here, you got some pretty amazing labels. I mean, the artwork on those labels, you got to talk to me about that. Yeah.
So when I started making wine, and like I said, I was very artistic minded in my youth. I think some of that faded away as the realities of life and family and jobs and kids. But anyway, so I always thought if I could ever have my own brand, I would want to just have all the labels be art. You know what I mean? One off. They don't have to be associated with each other. Different artists, I know that a lot of wineries have done artist series. I guess like all of mine are artist series. I just got a new artist to do a label for Viognier that I'm going to bottle in the summer here, and really excited about that. But yeah, we're always searching for new artists, and usually we try to like the Viognier label. That wine is called Holocene, which is the era of time that we're living on the planet, but it's also a song by a guy named Bon Iver, or artist named Bon Iver, who most recently did a lot of work with Taylor Swift, and actually her last two albums were pretty much heavily influenced by him. So the artwork that he used for that album that Holocene is on, I went and found that artist and said, hey, can you commission me a similar style artwork? And I'm going to call it Holocene from Bon Iver, and then tie in the artwork to it. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with all the labels to a certain extent. They all have some artwork that is also tied into the proprietary name of the wine, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Like, talk to me about Same Deep Water as You.
Same Deep Water as You. That's a song by The Cure. The wine is a quasi-Spanish blend of Carignan, Tempranillo, and Grenache. The artist is a Russian artist named Alex Wetza, and it's a very watery image with an octopus tentacles. And actually, we had that artwork for 2 years, I think, before we actually came up with a wine and a name that we wanted to use it with. We had purchased the artwork with some other artwork that we were buying from him, and said, oh, we'll just put this on the back burner. Came up with a wine, said, I want to use this image. I've always wanted to have a wine named after a Cure song, and it just, it was the only sort of aquatic image that we had that goes with Same Deep Water as You.
Yeah, and a wine label with tentacles on the front.
Yeah, it's actually our most popular label, I think, right now. People they really dig it. Especially we changed the color last year. It used to be like a pinkish purple genre, and we made it more green and blue, which is more appropriate, and it really popped off. It's really great. It's a fun label.
It's a great one. Now, Power, Corruption, and Lies.
Power, Corruption, and Lies is actually the name of an album from the 80s when I was a kid. by a band named New Order. The artwork on the label is actually a piece of the artwork from the cover art of the album. Luckily, that artwork that they used is public domain, so I'm hoping that it's okay that
I recognize the artwork.
My original wines were named after albums, and I used the cover art on the label. And then we only have 2 of those left. We stopped doing that and started going in a different direction, just because I didn't want the liability of somebody being upset that. So that's the first wine I ever made, or the first thing I put in a bottle. I said, I'm going to call it Wine, Power, Corruption, and Lies. And I love the album. I love the dichotomy between the flowery image and the name. And we just, but like I said, I think that one is okay because the actual artwork is from a Danish artist, and it's public domain that they used, and we just sort of borrowed it.
Yeah, looks fantastic. The last one I'm going to call you out on is the homage to Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures. I love that graphic.
That's the only other one. You're picking all the ones I really don't want to talk about publicly.
Oh, sorry.
No, I don't mind talking about them. I just hope nobody from the Joy Division.
Oh no.
I hope nobody out there. No, Joy Division is New Order. I mean, Joy Division is the predecessors to New Order. I love both those bands. I love the artwork for Unknown Pleasures. So we took it, we modified it to make it look like a wine bottle, the radiograph that they used on the original artwork.
I want that t-shirt.
Those are the 2 last ones that we have that are actually representative of the album cover that they're named after.
Yeah. Do you have t-shirts to that one?
I should. I have not yet, but
that may fund your expansion.
Disneyland did Mickey Mouse ears like that with Unknown Pleasures, and I know that they were not happy with that.
Okay.
I think those shirts are now super rare, and like they put a cease and desist on it immediately. But that's Disneyland. I'm kind of doing it, but they did do it. So.
That's pretty.
But yes, everybody asked for that shirt. I probably should make that shirt. You're right.
Little underground.
Yeah, why not?
So as people visit you to try to buy, they can't buy the shirt, but as they visit your tasting room, describe the experience. When people come and show up in Paso?
We have a more lounge-like atmosphere that we're trying to clearly define going forward. We do want it to be known. I try to make serious wines, and I think that's the emphasis. But then we want to have a fun environment to experience those in. And so it's constantly like a blurry line, you know what I mean? For me anyway, as the owner and trying to developing the marketing side, because we want it to be laid back, comfortable, and unpretentious, but we want it to be the focus of the attention is on high quality wines. And I think in most wine areas, those 2 things really don't go hand in hand. It seems to be that either you have very upscale, bougie, pretentious environments that make you feel like the wine has to be good if it's being presented to you in this kind of environment, versus my environment, which is the complete opposite. But I'm trying to get you to focus back onto the wine a little bit. And so, if that makes sense, and maybe I'm hoping with Analogique, the new tier, that we can focus more on the wine and less on the fun records and audio and all that stuff, because I feel like we're kind of losing touch with that. And although people love the environment here, we get lots of people who come in and they love the wine, they love the music, they love chilling out and hanging out. But it's you know what I mean? It's a blurry line for me.
At the end of the day, you're a winery and you make great products, and you want it to be about the wine.
It is about the wine. That's what I've done my whole life. This other stuff is just an extension of my personality that you get to experience while you're experiencing the wine. And
if you want to get into the mind of a winemaker, look at the records he listens to, look at the albums he listens to, look at his environment.
Yeah. I mean, lots of wineries now have records. I don't think they have as many as I have, but I know that Justin Smith of Saxum is a huge record collector, and in the caves of his winery, he has his record collection in there, which is really cool. he also isn't open to the public. But I guess, and I think compounded with, I'm sort of going off on a different tangent here, but compounding with our downtown setting, it's sort of like, I just don't want it to, it sort of veers into being a wine bar, and it's not. So I try to constantly trying to bring it back and go, hey, we totally appreciate that you feel comfortable here and you're having a great time and all that. But in the end, like,
it's not a wine bar.
Well, it's the focus is on the brand. You know what I mean? We are, if I was a wine bar, it'd be great. I wouldn't care at all. I'd be like, yeah, we're just selling other people's wine. But we really want to try to showcase our products, the art and the hard work that we put into them, the decades of career that I've, sacrificed to do this for a living. It's not the most lucrative thing in the world to do. I want that to be the focus. And so it's funny that you asked that question, and it's like I had a weekend where I was like just constantly in my mind going over those elements because as Paso grows and becomes more popular, we get lots of people who want to come in because of the environment, and wine is almost a secondary. And that's Paso in general, I think, anymore. I think that's probably every wine country, right? I mean, not everybody's coming here because they're a super heavy duty wine person. They're coming here because, USA Today wrote that this is one of the top 10 places to visit in California, and they're here.
And the flip side is you might open the eyes to someone who may not know that they love those wines.
I think that happens all the time, and we get a lot of people. The majority of the people that come here are coming because they heard about the wine. And then we do get a certain amount of people who are sent here by other people who go, oh, you got to go check this place out. It's really cool. Not, hey, you got to go check this place out because he makes amazing wines. But a smaller percentage is, hey, this place is really cool. You'll dig it. Go check it out.
But it could in turn bring in those people that end up loving it because of the wine. And that's the hope at the end of the day, obviously. But
that's our job, right? Is now that we got them here and they say, oh, this is a really cool environment. It's super fun to hang out in. Now we're going to educate you about why these wines make it even better to be here. So
as somebody that worked behind a bar, I worked at a place that was one of the few wineries that actually sold food. And then they could come in, buy their food, buy a bottle of wine and have a picnic. But at the end of the day, we were a winery, and it was so frustrating because it was like we made really, really good wine. But these people were like, no, we're just here to have a picnic and grab a bottle. And it's like, really? Like, you don't want to taste the wine? Like, you don't want to do wine tasting? Because we are a winery. We're not a restaurant.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. I'm not doing food, but I'm doing fun,
right?
Laid back, kind of loungy vibe. But I don't want you just to come in. I mean, I shouldn't say that. If you want to come in and have a glass of wine, that's totally cool too, as long as we have room to accommodate it. But yeah, you know what I'm saying then. I mean,
totally. I understand it because I was on the other side, like, oh my gosh, really? Like, just taste it. And then you would get those people like, oh wow. And then they are coming in and doing a full tasting and all of this. But, they were there for a different reason. And you in turn hope that they then came because of the wine. But
right. I think that we're trying, like I said, that it's our job to shift those minds that either they came in for the wine and they're experiencing the place and and that's our job as hospitality hosts, right? You know what I mean? Is to then go, hey, guess what? We make some really cool wines too, and check this out and what have you.
Have you considered, do you do events? To where then that could be with your members, where that could be they'll like come in and hang out. And
we do. Obviously that tapered off and we haven't got back into full event mode. I don't think anybody has. I think probably the events that have taken place the last 6 months have been the first events that we've had in wine country here for a while, since the first of the year for sure. The problem that I'm having, and this is personal to my actual space, it's not very big, so we can't have it. And we used to utilize a parking lot and have like an urban party. And now the parking situation has gotten so bad, I had to get permission from all of the neighboring businesses to be able to take their parking for the day and have a party. And I just don't know how that's going to fly anymore, because now we have a parking system downtown that has made a huge impact on the problem of parking in downtown here. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that and not, have to basically go and beg all of my neighbors and go, hey, this Saturday at noon, I'm going to close this parking lot down, and they're going to go, what?
Yeah.
4 years ago, it wasn't nearly the issue it is now. And that was our annual fall party. We would have basically our anniversary party. Then COVID hit, and we didn't have it. And then this year I'm deciding how to navigate that.
Yeah, that's
always something.
There's always some challenge, right?
Constantly. It is. But it's a good challenge because, like you said, there's a lot more people here. And so parking is definitely at a prime.
That's a better growing pain than no one wants to go to Paso.
Right.
We don't have that problem. We have Wine Fest this weekend, and
Oh, do you? Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's going to be, and they moved it from the square to the actual event center at the where they have the fair.
Oh.
So this will be the first time in 25 years that they haven't had it right here in the park.
Not in that big quid ring. Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're not going to do it right. Basically, a block and a half from my tasting room. They decided to move it to the event center, which is smart.
Mm-hmm. It's allowed to grow.
Yeah, they had way outgrown this, and it's more complicated with ABC laws to do what they were doing.
Yeah,
downtown, it took a lot.
So I don't know if you can talk about it, if it's still under top secret, but talk to us about this Analogique.
Analogique.
Yeah,
Analogique is sort of I've wanted to have. I've been working really hard the last few years on developing much higher in vineyard acquisitions, so getting into vineyards that are incredibly well known for very, very high quality. And it just takes a long time to work your way into those things and be able to buy that fruit. And the last few years I have been able to do that. And so I thought I want to develop a tier to sort of highlight that those wines. And so Analogique was, it goes sort of hand in hand with what we're already doing, with high fidelity wines. Obviously records are an analog reproduction system for playing music. We even use tube equipment only here in the tasting room. So everything is analog. Wine is analog, right? I mean, there's no digitization of that product. So Analogique is just going to be our higher tiered wine that we're starting out with very, very small quantities, 50 case lots of about 3 wines and 1 white wine, which will only be 25 cases actually. So we're excited about it. And unlike my wines under Bushong Vintage Company, it will have a standardized label that, is the same for each wine with proprietary information on the back. Yeah. So it'll be on the marketing side of it a little bit easier for us to work with rather than having almost each wine be an individual and trying to develop how to make that cohesive so that everyone understands, no, it's a brand. It's not just single wine. This one will be cohesive from the get-go as far as the presentation and the artwork.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. So
pure expression of select vineyard locations.
We're going to have a G2, which is a local vineyard here in Paso that's quite popular, that was made famous by Justin Smith of Saxum. We'll have a G2 blend. We'll have Coast View, which is way up on Gavilan Mountain in Monterey County, which is becoming a very popular vineyard, small vineyard, very remote, incredibly amazing round site. We'll have a Coast View Syrah, and then we'll have a Paper Street Carignan blend. Paper Street is a vineyard here in Paso Robles. It's the highest elevation in the Willow Creek district at 2,300 feet. It's farmed and owned by the Ducey family, which are historic family of people who've been farming here for 100 years. And then the single white we'll have will be a Bien Nacido Viognier that's basically 100% barrel fermented, barrel aged, and will be bottled basically unfiltered, very small volume. So,
that sounds fantastic.
So those are the vineyards we'll be working with for Analogique at least this fall. And then we have.
And those will be released this fall? Will it be on a waiting list? Or?
We're going to bottle them. They will be a separate tasting. They'll be their own tasting list and a separate club. We'll do a separate club. They're going to be at a slightly higher price point, slightly elevated price point than what we sell most of our other wines. I think the biggest challenge for me as an owner and winemaker and consumer of wine and lover of wine, is the elevated cost of these products that we've been experiencing, especially in this area in the last couple of years. Everything is just, there has to be something that's more approachable to a greater demographic than the wine 1%. They can only, not everyone can drop $125 on a bottle of wine and just be like, yeah, that's no big deal. It's a big deal to me, you know? So I think Analogique is going to represent that percentage. It's not going to be quite that high a price point, but to cater to that crowd, and also the crowd we already have, or the members that we have, or the customers that maybe say, hey, I do want one special bottle for this weekend, and then they can go and take a look at Analogique and see what those wines are like.
Oh, that's a great offering. Just to have stuff at all the price points. Yeah,
we're trying to maintain it to the best that we can with everything that's going on economically right now, which we're all experiencing, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you do one interesting thing, and all the wineries who work with it, you've got a winter vinyl package.
We do.
Talk to me about that.
Well, it started during COVID when we were completely shut down. We weren't doing anything. Well, the whole world wasn't, or at least the whole country, I should say. I'm not sure what the rest of the world was, but so I remember I was like, I have all these records in storage, and I'm going to bring them into the tasting room where I have more space, and I'm just going to go through them and see what I can't even remember what I have, because we have nothing else to do. We're just sitting around here trying to sell wine that we can ship. I think at that point, that was like during the major shutdown, and nobody was even thinking about selling wine. Everyone was thinking like, oh my God, what is going on? This is the wackiest, weirdest thing that's ever happened. And I kind of looked at it as like, oh, wow, I get a little break from hospitality. So we brought them all in here. And the woman who was managing my tasting room at that point was like, you know what, we should do a mystery vinyl pack. You have all these records. You can't possibly need or want all of them. So why don't we sell 3 bottles of wine and a mystery record? And so we threw that out there as a promotion, and it was hugely successful. I mean, people were just like totally digging it. And then I said, well, I can't keep doing a mystery one because I'm going to run out of my storage unit records. So we said, let's put together a vinyl pack where we curate 3 wines with one album that we really thought was the best album that came out that year. And then we do it as an addition to our club package, and it goes out in December, almost like a holiday gift kind of a thing. So it's usually three red wines. Typically, one of them is usually a library selection. And then whatever album we thought, wow, this was the album that we really dug the most from this last year. And
what was the 2021 album?
2021 was Pharoah Saunders, Floating Points. Pharoah Saunders is like a jazz musician from back in the Coltrane era and all that, and hadn't put an album out for over 2 decades. And he put out one album, and it was all, I can't remember, it only had 2 tracks on it. It was,
oh, really?
Yeah. And it was a really cool, I gotta have a copy of it somewhere. But that was the album we thought it was just, just a iconic jazz artist that hadn't done anything for, I think, over 2 decades. And he puts out this amazing album called Floating Points. And that was our 21 selection.
I got to check that one out.
Yeah.
Now, do you ever curate the albums with what they should be listening to when they're drinking the wine?
We don't go that far, we sort of talk about the wines, maybe the library wine, but we really, it's just sort of like, here's a selection of some nice wines and a really nice album, and pretty much everything you can just enjoy together. I think the only way you can curate it, I've never said this wine is for these songs, and this wine is for these tracks, and this one is for this tracks. I haven't done that yet, but maybe I will. It's a good idea. I'll look into that this upcoming December and see how it goes.
I love that idea. I was up at Caduceus Cellars up in Jerome, Arizona. It's JMK's winery from Tool. And every wine that they come out with comes with the recommended playlist on the back.
Each wine. And we do that for our normal club. Every wine has it has an album. This album, this wine, these are the tracks we really dig. Check those out. And it's sort of fun. But I've never really paired every wine in the vinyl pack to tracks on the album that we're giving out. But I probably should. It's a good idea.
think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
So, kind of going back to this one question: what motivates you to keep making wine?
What motivates me to keep? Well, I think every winemaker is the quest for quality, or the quest. I don't even know if it's quality so much, because that's so subjective, but the quest to make what they feel is the best representation of that varietal that they can make. And that, I think, is a big one for me at this point in my career. And like I was telling you earlier, I feel like I'm making the best wines I've ever made in my life. And working with some of the better vineyards I've ever got exposure to. And I want to showcase those wines in what I feel is the most expressive way possible. And that's definitely what motivates me, and the excitement to share that expression with everybody. That's it. I mean, it's certainly not the economics of it. And I certainly don't I don't dislike, but going into harvest anymore as I get older is just very physically taxing. I'll say that. So that part of it is like, oh my gosh, here we go. Here's 3 months gone, where I don't get to do anything else for a long time. So that's but then I get those wines and I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad I get to work with Roussan from this amazing vineyard. I'm really excited about it. And I can't wait 10 months from now to be able to release this, and it's going to kick ass and people are going to love it. And that's going to motivate me and keep me going. So,
yeah, I can see the motivation. You're an artist, you're a creator, and you're putting your music in the bottle.
Pretty much. I'm trying. Yeah. I just don't mess it up too bad. That's my job anymore. Buy super high quality fruit. Don't get away too much. Just sort of let it go.
Don't mess it up too bad.
Yep. That's my motto. Yeah. That's my motto. That was my original boss's motto. Two things. Don't fall in love with the shit, and don't mess anything up too bad. He was pretty laid back, but that was the thing.
And so, Jason, as we're wrapping down, is there anything I haven't talked to you about that you want to?
No, I mean, if this, come and see us in Paso Robles. We're located at 565 12th Street, downtown Paso Robles. We're open Thursday through Monday. We tend to have later hours on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So you can call us at 805-602-2003 or find us at www.bushongvintagecompany.com to make a reservation. And we'd love to share everything that we just discussed on this podcast with you. If you want to just come in and have a wine, pick out an album, not a problem. If you want to taste through a flight, enjoy the wines, join the club, we'd love that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason, for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.